It was a chilly autumn evening when a group of friends, Emily, Jake, Sarah, and Tom, gathered in the dimly lit basement of Emily's old family home. They had heard rumors about a ritual called the Midnight Game, a dark and dangerous challenge that was said to test one's courage and endurance. According to the legend, those who dared to play it risked summoning something beyond their worst nightmares. But they were young, thrill-seekers at heart, and the allure of the unknown was too tempting to resist. The rules were simple. Write your name on a piece of paper, prick your finger to add a drop of blood, and then light a candle. At exactly midnight, you were to knock on the door 3 times, inviting the entity into your home. From that moment on, you were to keep your candle lit and stay on the move until dawn. If the candle went out, you had 10 seconds to relight it, or the entity would claim you. Laughing nervously, the friends set up the game. Emily's heart pounded as she watched the clock tick closer to midnight. The basement's shadows seemed to stretch and twist as the moment approached, but she brushed off the uneasy feeling. It was just a game, she told herself. Nothing bad would really happen. When the clock struck 12, Jake knocked on the door 3 times. For a moment there was nothing but silence. Then a faint breeze swept through the room, making the candles flicker. The game had begun. At first it was easy enough. They wandered through the house, candles in hand, whispering and laughing to keep their nerves in check. But as the minutes dragged on, an oppressive atmosphere settled over them. The air grew colder, and the shadows in the house seemed to move on their own, creeping closer whenever they weren't looking. Then it happened. Sarah's candle went out. She froze, panic flashing in her eyes as she fumbled for her matches. But before she could strike one, the darkness around her thickened, as if something was moving within it. She managed to relight the candle just in time, but the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. They weren't alone anymore. As the night wore on, the friends realized the entity wasn't just a figment of their imagination. It was real, and it was hunting them. They heard footsteps in the halls, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, and the unmistakable feeling of being watched. The entity toyed with them, extinguishing their candles at the worst possible moments, forcing them to scramble in the dark to relight them. Jake was the first to falter. His candle flickered out, and as he desperately tried to relight it, a dark shape emerged from the shadows. It was tall, impossibly thin, with eyes that glowed like embers in the dark. Jake screamed, but the sound was cut short as the entity reached him. The others found him moments later, curled up on the floor, his eyes wide open and mouth frozen in a silent scream. But he was gone, his body cold and lifeless. Panic set in. Emily, Sarah, and Tom knew they had to keep moving, but exhaustion was taking its toll. The entity grew bolder, appearing more frequently, its presence warping the very fabric of reality around them. The walls seemed to close in, doors that should have led to familiar rooms opened to impossible places, and the clocks all stopped ticking. Time was meaningless in the entity's grip. Sarah was next. She tripped in the dark, her candle snuffed out as it hit the ground. Tom and Emily heard her desperate attempts to relight it, but they couldn't get to her in time. The entity claimed her with a flash of darkness, leaving nothing behind but her extinguished candle. By now, Emily and Tom were barely holding on. They huddled together, their candles the only light in a house that had become a maze of terror. The entity's whispers filled their ears, promising them an end to their suffering if they just gave in. But they knew that surrender meant death. As the first light of dawn began to seep through the windows, the entity grew desperate. It lashed out, extinguishing their candles repeatedly, forcing them to relight them over and over. But with the final strike of the clock, a pale ray of sunlight broke through the darkness. The entity let out a screech of fury and vanished, leaving Emily and Tom trembling in the morning light. The game was over, but the scars it left behind would never fade. Emily and Tom never spoke of that night again, and they avoided each other, haunted by memories too dark to face. But they knew one thing for certain. The Midnight Game was no mere legend. It was real, and those who played it would never be the same again.